modalities, even if the filmmakers don't know it, because there's like, in alchemy, alchemists believe that there's an overmind, or a sphere of influence that surrounds our reality, and that we're constantly being influenced by this invisible sphere of influence. So even if the filmmakers don't know that they're evoking alchemical principles, and in some cases they may not, they still manage to do it, although I do know that Stanley Kubrick was a big fan of alchemy and the Kabbalah, and many, many books in his library were reportedly on alchemy. He had texts by Nicholas Flamel and many others. So I know for sure that he was influenced by it. And then other films that I mentioned besides Lord, and I know that J.R.R. Tolkien, who was an Orthodox Catholic, but I think that it was a strange Catholicism that possibly had been influenced by some alchemical principles, similar to the people who built the Gothic cathedrals. And then the other films that I mentioned are Terminator by James Cameron, which is really about where this age will head if it doesn't end. In other words, if this current age we're in does not end in 2012 or does not end next year or in 10 years, then we probably are going to be heading to some kind of Terminator-type future where the human soul, they will attempt to download the human soul into the machine. The machine will then become, the device that overruns our world. Titanic by James Cameron is another essay in the book, and many people don't like the film Titanic, but what is interesting about the film Titanic is that, first off, it's the biggest hit ever in cinema history, and secondly, the film is about us. When you go in to see the film Titanic, you already know how it's going to end. We all know that the Titanic went down on April 14th. But so the film is saying, okay, what is this about? And the film is how the passengers are on an iron ship sailing in the wilderness, and their own hubris brings the ship down. Their own idea that this is an unsinkable ship, that they can turn all the engines on and go right through a field of icebergs, and think that they're not going to hit one, and then they hit it, and the iron ship falls apart, and they all die. And what's interesting is there's no suspense in this film. We know that that's going to happen the minute you sit down in the theater. So it's like an eerie forecasting of how this age is going to end if we're not careful. And so there's all these kinds of essays throughout the film, throughout the book, and it's really very exciting to be working on it.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, there are a bunch of questions that pop up in my head here, but I want to return to the idea of that messages can be communicated through film, yet that the director or the makers of the film might be unaware of it. That is very interesting, I think.
It is very interesting. That comes from letters that I have written to certain filmmakers asking them about their films, and I've received back their responses, and I would be amazed by, excuse this, but how ignorant they were. and then I realized, of course, that this overmind is influencing things, and a lot of people today are conspiracy theorists, and they keep searching for the magic bullet that's going to unveil, the reality of what's going on around us. And they never seem to find it. And the reason that they never seem to find it is not because there isn't conspiracies. There certainly are conspiracies in this world. But because there is an overmind that is influencing us in very subtle ways. And this is really the Hermetic tradition. The Hermeticists would influence political events and societal events around them without ever taking credit for it, and no one would actually ever know that it was they, the Hermeticists, who would actually cause the event to happen. This is, of course, the role that Gandalf has in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
He is he's an alchemist. He wears a Phrygian hat, and he has a staff, and he rides a white horse.
Yeah.
And he is transmuted from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White by falling into the abyss, fire, and all these alchemical allegories are going on. But what he's really doing is he's influencing the events that are occurring, but he's influencing them in a selfless way, not in a selfish way.
Yeah.
So he's kind of the anti-conspiracy theorist. And this is what's going on a lot of levels. You know, people are working towards making a better world every day, and we don't know who they are, and frequently they don't even know that they're doing this. And I think that this is going on, and it's really a cause of great hope and joy, because there are forces at work that we do not understand. You know, I always like to think about the fact that for 50 years, the Soviet Union, or 45 years, the Soviet Union and the United States faced off each other with literally thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And yet they never managed to get in a war, a full-out shooting war.
Yeah.
I always, thought, why? Why didn't a mistake happen? Why didn't, a submarine captain accidentally launch a missile?
Yeah.
And it is quite a miracle to think that we actually didn't destroy ourselves in the Cold War.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, this is some kind of overarching influence of this meta-dimensional overmind that is influencing us and changing us and nurturing us every day. And this experiment, this great alchemical experiment that is us, that is history, is coming to a close here, and the end of the experiment is at hand, and we're seeing it. And this is why there's so much turmoil in the world today, because the people in power don't want the experiment to end because they will lose their power. And, so this is what's going on, I think, in a very real way, and it's happening in art, and it's happening in science. Why quantum physics is rising up right now, which is an alchemical view of science. And this is why you see things that on the Internet, for instance, that you wouldn't have never dreamed of even reading about 10, 15 years ago, yet here it is, plain as day, on the Internet, and anyone can read it.
Yeah.
So I'm not a Pollyanna-ish person, but I am an optimist, and I do believe that things actually are getting better.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, yeah, that's right. I mean, but do you think that things are already a done deal, so to speak? I mean, it seems like there are many issues that we have to solve before we can, continue or go into the new, so to speak. But I mean, do you think that what is it that we have to do to make this a possibility, or do you think that it is a done deal?
Well, I don't think it's a done deal. I think that we're still at that bifurcated place. We're at that crossroads, and we have to make right decisions and all of that, and do the right thing. But when you boil water, you turn the heat on, and the water boils, and the water reaches a state of furious boiling, and then it turns to steam. So its essence is changed at the